we are going to make some Cajun chicken with kind of a lovely little like rice dish, some sauteed or stewed beans, and some honey cornbread. So let's start out by getting our bacon cooking up for our rice, because we're gonna cook them in like the rice in this lovely like tomatoey, bacony deliciousness. So it has this really rich flavor to it. So I've got some bacon right here that we'll snip up and saute in the pan. That way it gives the rice just, again, a really lovely flavor on here. And it's gonna just add this extra richness. So we'll get this going, and then I'm gonna prep up some veggies to get going so that we can get our rice going before we start prepping up our cornbread for that. And we're making cornbread because, as you can imagine, my oldest daughter, it's one of her like daily requests is for more cornbread. So I've got it. We're gonna make it again because I was like, you know what? Cornbread works with Cajun, flavorings, so we're gonna have it. She'll be happy. She's already very, very happy. Although she requested I make her the jumbo loaves again, and because I told you last time we made the jumbo loaf when we made our little dinosaur ones. And I said, the two, when they come down, I said, my two oldest kids are going to ask for the jumbo loaves for themselves. And I'm like, we're not going to do that one today because they took a lot longer to bake up. Let's get this going. Kind of spread it out, but we'll get our bacon going. And then we're going to just prep up some of our veggies that will go into this dish as well. But once our bacon has kind of rendered down a little bit, we're going to toss in our rice to kind of crisp up in that bacon fat with some onions and peppers and tomatoes for this.
Did you get any more garlic salt?
I did get some more garlic salt, although this is my tiny little garlic salt that will hold me over until I go to Costco. I had ordered more, but they didn't both arrive on time. So there's only there. But that was the quickest I could get it. But it will hold me over. I didn't want to have to run out to my Costco yet to get the rest of it. But that should suffice till the end of the weekend-ish. Hopefully I have another one coming because my package both didn't come. But if we go through like a pound of garlic salt, then we've got some issues. But they would be delicious issues. But we have them. I remembered my husband literally walked around with the garlic salt in his hand until I ordered it. So he was not going to get blamed for the lack of not being ordered. Okay, let's get our onions. I'm going to save some of my onions to go up for our little sauteed vegetables, but we're going to put some in with our little rice dish here. And they are a little frosty, but that's okay. That won't change their deliciousness. So that's going to go in. We're going to put some garlic in with our dish as well. So let me slide this over here. And then we'll prep up our garlic, not our garlic bread. See, I've got garlic on my mind. We'll prep up our honey cornbread because really, that's what my daughter's looking forward to. I told her I'd make it once during this, snow holiday essentially, and she's finally gonna get it. We'll see how long it lasts. So we'll give this a few minutes, but we are getting down to it. I'm hoping to make it through tomorrow, or at least partially, without going to the store. I want to make it to Saturday to go to the store. That way everything can hopefully be melted by then and just be a nice, easy trip. You always think you stocked up so much, and I'm like, well, I'm glad we weren't snowed in for so long because we are down to our bare bones. I know what we're having for dinner tonight because we are getting down to our bare bones of food in the house. So we're going to have burgers. I'm going to prep up some homemade buns, hamburger buns for tonight. And then we'll do burgers, and then I'll probably do either potato wedges or home fries of a sort, and something else to go along with it, because that's kind of what we're down to. especially because I was like, I've got hamburger and I've got some Italian sausage and I've got chicken breasts. And those are my main proteins left. And last night we kind of had an Italian food, so I was like, oh, we don't need to do like another pasta dish for at least a little while. Let's break these guys up. Get our bacon going. And again, this bacon is going to give such a rich flavor to this rice dish that is just going to make it really, really lovely.
Oh, what kind of peppers are you using?
These are just sweet peppers, so, you know, they're not spicy, but if you wanted to add a little bit of heat, you could definitely throw in like a jalapeno or poblano or any of the spicier peppers. If you see me working in the kitchen, 99.999% of the time, it's going to be a sweet pepper. Occasionally, I'll use a shishito pepper, which 1 in 10 have a little bit of a kick to it, but very rarely do I use a spicy pepper because I am not a great lover of spicy food. I just can't handle it. It just puts my mouth on fire. But I always like to say we don't like spicy food, but my husband loves spicy food. But as I say, collective, we don't like spicy food. I'm going to save some of those. We're going to get this again. I dice up a few of these to go into our little rice dish. Have it ready. Put those to the side. Got our onions, sweet peppers, and then we'll get our tomatoes in there in a little bit. Nice little stir around. Okay. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit, and we can start working on our cornbread while we wait for this bacon to kind of render off and crisp up. Okay. While that's going, we're going to start with our cornbread. We are going to start with 1 1/4 cups of buttermilk. But don't worry if you don't have buttermilk, because a lot of people don't just have that lying around. And a lot of times I don't. So when I don't have buttermilk, like today, I use a mixture of milk and cream with a squeeze of fresh lemon juice over it. It mimics the texture and the flavor of buttermilk and kind of the same process. So that's what I have in here. And I kind of do like a half and half of the cream and the milk with the squeeze of the lemon juice. And what I do is I do the milk first, then the cream on top, squeeze the lemon juice over, which thickens it up. Gives you that slightly sour taste that buttermilk has, but makes it to where you have that wonderful base for our cornbread. So we've got our 1 1/4 cups in here. Give us a nice little stir around, and then we're going to add in 2 eggs. So 1 and 2. I'm going to poke each yolk, and we can get them kind of mixing up. And then we're going to add in a 1/2 cup of melted butter. And I always let it just cool down a little bit so it's not super hot when it goes in, but we'll mix it in to our kind of our buttermilk or our half and half mixture that we have going on here. And I use salted butter whenever I'm using my baking, so very, very important. Salted butter makes everything better. I'll give my bacon a little bit of a stir here real quick. So we're almost to a good crisping up stage where we can start adding in our onions. But I want them crisp up a little bit more.
Do you ever use Irish butter?
You know, I do on certain things. I will use it. You know, it is a higher price point for it. So a lot of times when I do my little like Irish theme week around, you know, St. Patrick's Day, I'll use some Irish butter in there. But it is more expensive. I do love it. It is a creamier, lovely butter, same with like European butter in general. But it is more expensive. So most of the time I don't use it for a lot of my baking because then it just kind of, that cost adds up. But it is lovely and wonderful and delicious. Okay, we're gonna add in our sugar. We're gonna do 2/3 a cup of sugar plus 2 tablespoons of honey. But most of our honey flavor is actually gonna come into the honey butter that we brush over our cornbread at the end. But this honey right now is gonna give our cornbread a lovely kind of golden brown color to it. So it's a slightly browner colored cornbread than the typical basic yellow one. And that's just because honey, when it bakes up, is a little bit darker. So we're gonna do 2/3 cup of sugar in here with 2 tablespoons of honey. And I just kind of eyeball my 2 tablespoons of honey for this. So we've got about 1 and about 2. And we're gonna mix these in. But again, that really rich honey flavor is gonna come for the honey butter that we brush over the end, which really pops. Because when you add the honey in the baking process, you don't get that strong honey flavor, but at the very end, you'll get it. But you can see the honey is already making the batter just a little bit more golden brown for it. Now, I will say when you're going to be using honey in there, make sure, especially if you buy yours like local and whatnot, that you like your honey. You know, it's only happened to me once before, but I bought, you know, this honey from the, and it must have been the flowers that they were harvesting, you know, getting their little nectar from. But we did not like the honey. We couldn't figure out what the weird flavor was, and then we finally down to it was this just batch of honey had a funky taste to it. And it was just a very musky flower, so I'm assuming there. But depending what plants the bees, you know, harvest their nectar from to make their honey, in the pollen, it does change the flavor. Like, we got some honey from an apple orchard, and it was the sweetest and almost had a fruity flavor to it. It was the most wonderful honey ever. So it does actually impact the flavor. So just always make sure you love your honey first before you use it and commit to something. We're gonna add in some baking soda and salt. We're gonna do a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And so between the eggs and the baking soda, this is what's gonna give our cornbread this nice little puff. And then we're gonna add in a cup of flour and a cup of cornmeal.
How many measuring spoons do you think you own?
I own a lot of random measuring spoons. So I have this set that I always keep on so that I don't lose them. I have like a bougie, nice all-clad set that I've like misplaced in pieces. And then I had, at one time, there were like these move up and down where it could be like 1 spoon could be all the different sizes. And I never really loved that one. You know, you kind of collect them and lose them through time. So I have a lot. I have a lot of measuring cups, a lot of things, you know, but they're really important because if one set gets dirty and I do baking twice a day, I like to have multiple sets so that I don't have to constantly, you know, be washing or hand washing lots of stuff. Okay, with our bacon is pretty crisp up here, I'm gonna add in my onions real quick. I'm gonna add this to the slide. And we'll get our onions to kind of toast up for a second. And then we'll add in our garlic and our peppers. We'll give a nice little crispy bit for it. Let it caramelize up for this. Again, this is gonna really give our rice, it's gonna just make it really delicious. Okay, let's add in our flour and our cornmeal. Now, you're gonna wanna use yellow cornmeal. Yellow cornmeal is sweeter than white cornmeal. And you might think, hey, I've never heard of white cornmeal. It exists. And I always just remember because when I was in high school and we had sent out my stepdad to grab flour and like cornmeal and a few other ingredients from the grocery store. And he was never the one to pick up groceries from the grocery store. And he like grabbed like the weirdest things of everything. And he came back with like white cornmeal and it did not make very good cornbread.
How much bacon are you using?
It was not quite 1/2 pound because it was a 12-ounce pack. So it was half of a 12-ounce pack. So I'm gonna say it was probably around 5 to 6 ounces of bacon for there. So a good amount, but you could use a little bit less if you wanted to. I was just gonna use it the pack because we're not gonna just leave two or three little pieces around. There we go. We're gonna fill it up to the top. So here's our nice cornmeal. And then we're gonna mix this until it's just barely combined. I wanna make sure we get right to the top. There we go. So don't over mix it because again, this is a butter base to it. So you want it to be a little bit lumpy. It's gonna be a nice thick batter because of that butter, but don't mix it until it's smooth. You want it to be a nice thick chunky batter. Now, if you like to add in either like corn or jalapenos, now would be the time to add it in to it. I like mine plain, but you know, some sweet corn, either frozen or from a can, you could add in about a half a cup would be lovely, or a fresh jalapeno diced up would work as well if you like that spicier cornbread. There we go. So we have it just mixed perfectly for our wings. I'm gonna add in right now, I'm gonna add in my peppers and my garlic, and we'll let those saute up here, and then we'll get those into our mini loaves to kind of bake up. So we wanna get this going so that our rice can cook, because that's one of our things that are gonna take the longest to cook up in our meal today. So we'll give this a nice little saute. Already smells wonderful. And then let me grab my little mini loaf pan out of here. And we're gonna get a little bit of spray to spray it down because that will allow it to come out nice and evenly. Where are you? Get over one more. Yeah. Now, you can also do these in either like an 8x8 pan or a 9x9 pan. It'll just take longer to bake. You can also do it in mini, like on a muffin tin as well. I found that my kids really loved the mini loaf pan here. They also loved when we made my older ones to keep the loaf pan that was slightly bigger than this. She was like, "Can you please make them?" And I'm like, "No, that's just ridiculous. You know, you can eat 1.5 and you have to share." But she's like, "I loved my own personal mini loaf," and I was like, "It's a little ridiculous."
Would this work well with a cast iron?
You can definitely do a cast iron. Just make sure you've got it well seasoned and a little bit preheated before you put it in there, so it kind of creates that non-stick surface on it. But yes, you could definitely do it in a cast iron. And now we're gonna kind of scoop it into each base for it. I'm gonna go back, I'll do a little bit in each one, and then I'll even it back out here. Let me slide this out of the way. Just go through each one, and I always just do a little scoop and then even back out because you don't want to have to be fishing for individual scoops after this. But this is our honey butter cornbread. What we're going to do at the very end after it comes out and it cools off for about a minute or two, we're going to brush it with some honey butter, which is going to give a lovely flavor to it. And we're actually going to brush it twice. You brush it kind of a few minutes after it comes out and then right before it's serving. That first layer of honey butter soaks into the batter, and then the second layer gives it a nice kind of sticky top to it, which again is just wonderful. And these are my kids' absolute favorite. They remind me a lot of, if you ever went to like Famous Dave's and their sweet cornbread. Oh, that was my favorite. But it reminds me a lot of that cornbread. We used to go there when I was a kid every so often. Hop here. And then we'll just go through and kind of level these guys out. Now again, because there is honey in this batter, these cornbread will have a slightly more golden brown color to it than a yellow color to it. But that honey is going to add just the great amount of flavor to it. And then I'll clean off my top just a little bit because we've got a little bit of drippings on here, but we don't want to waste any. This is one that there's never leftovers of. Okay. And then we're just gonna clean off our pan a little bit because that will just save you time later, because it's easier to just give a little wipe now than to have to kind of scrub off the baked on things. And then we're gonna pop this in the oven in just a second. Once it's at nice at 350 degrees, yep. We'll pop it in there in just a second. I wanna get this going so that this will come out nice and hot in just a little bit. So we've got our onions, peppers, garlic, and bacon in here sauteing for our rice. We're gonna add in, we're gonna toast up our rice, we'll add in some tomatoes, and then our broth base for it. So I'm gonna turn this down, and we're gonna add in our rice here. We're not going to rinse our rice because I want it to crisp up a little bit. So a lot of times I will rinse my rice before I'm making it, but for this, we want it to toast up a little bit. And when you rinse it, it won't toast up as nicely. So I've got 2 cups of rice. We're gonna mix it around and let it kind of hit those nice little bits of bacon grease and let it toast for a second.
What are the 2 brands of the pots?
So I have all clad and I have hex clad. So my all clad are my all metal ones here, and this is a saute pan. It's a 3-quart saute pan, which I absolutely love. I've had them for about 17 years now, and they're really great for cooking different things. And then my other one is my non-stick pans, which are my hex clad pans. And I've had those for a little over 2 years now, and I really love them. They're really easy to clean, and I haven't ruined them yet. So that's kind of a good sign for the non-stick pans, because I'm typically pretty rough on my cookware because I cook like twice a day, every single day, essentially. We're gonna add in about a tablespoon or so of tomato paste. There we go. This is gonna add a nice, rich kind of tomatoey flavor to this. We're gonna add in some spices here, and then we'll add in some water and chicken bouillon. We're gonna add in about a half a teaspoon of dried thyme. So a couple good shakes over. We're kind of going for a nice little Cajun seasoning for it. We do about a teaspoon of paprika, smoked paprika. This is gonna give it a nice red color, which also we'll get from the tomato paste. Slide these guys over here. I've got a little bit of red pepper, smidge amount, but you kind of need that little heat. So when I say a smidge, just a little bit. You could do more if you like more. Or if you don't have to even do a mixture, you can use a Cajun mix of seasoning already, but I don't have any, so I'm just using the basic spices that you find in a Cajun seasoning. We're gonna use some oregano. So mix that around a good, like a teaspoon or so, because oregano is pretty mild. And then I'm just gonna use a little bit of Mrs. Dash's table blend, which is kind of an everything, about a half a teaspoon. And then we're gonna add in a little bit of onion powder, which is kind of that savory note you get in your Cajun seasoning, which is really, really lovely. I ran out yesterday, so when I ordered a bunch of my spices, I got some more onion powder. So about a teaspoon. And we're gonna coat this up for this. And this is gonna be kind of like our Cajun flavors in our rice dish here for it. There we go. It'll be delicious. So we're gonna add it around and kind of give the nice color. You see how that tomato paste and that paprika is really giving the rice that wonderful coloring to it. And then what we're going to do is we will add in our water and our chicken bouillon, and we'll let it kind of steam up and kind of cook it like a regular rice after this. There we go. So I'm gonna add in, since I had 2 cups of rice, we're gonna use 3 cups of water. So I'm gonna mix in pour in 1 cup right now, and we're just gonna kind of scrape it along the bottom of the pan here, just so that we can get a good kind of mixture here and pick up any of those spices that are kind of sunk in.
What are you making for dinner tonight?
For dinner tonight, we're gonna do kind of comfort food. I'm gonna make some homemade hamburger buns, and we're gonna make some homemade like hamburgers, maybe bacon cheeseburgers, and some either I think potato wedges. Kind of just like a comfort food because we're down to the very end of our groceries, and I have about 3 pounds of ground beef. So I was like, we can do burgers, a little bit different. There we go, add in a little bit more, give it a good stir. And then I'm gonna add in my diced up tomatoes over here, and then we'll put the lid on once it comes to a nice boil, and we'll let this kind of cook up. There we go. Give it a good stir, but this will be just kind of a really good kind of Cajun rice that will have great flavor to it. Let me slide this over. And then we'll pop our cornbread in the oven. So let's get our tomatoes diced up in here for it. I think we'll do 2. The tomatoes will add a little bit of extra liquid as well to this dish. You could use a can of diced tomatoes if you wanted to. Just take out this little teeny core piece. And if you're going to use the dice, keep the liquid as well. Freshly diced has a lot of juice in there as well, and so they kind of measure about the same amount of liquid. There we go. And just kind of do a little coarse chop. You don't have to have them perfectly cubed. And then we can add this in, and I'll turn up our heat to a high. Once it comes to a nice boil, then we will put our lid on and we will let it simmer. Let's give it a good stir, and then let's go pop our cornbread in the oven to cook up. Okay. Put this to the side. Let me get my little. Okay, so the cornbread is going in the oven at 350 degrees. We're gonna put it on the top, that way it gets that good baking time. And we're gonna do it for about 22 minutes. So I'm gonna set my timer. Now, if you're gonna do muffins, they're gonna take about 20 minutes. If you're gonna do a pan or bigger loaves, it's gonna take a little bit more time for each one. You know, like a 9 by 9 inch pan can take like 30 to 35 minutes. So you're just gonna have to vary based on what size pan you're gonna use. And I always say just check it, you know, once you've got kind of a bulk part, you know, just check it so often until you get to the right size for it. Okay, we've got this coming. Once it's boiled, we'll cover that up. We'll get our chicken in just a second, but let's get our beans kind of stewing in here. You know what we forgot to add? Nice little scoop of chicken bouillon. This is gonna add us a nice bit of flavor to our rice as well, since we didn't add any salt or anything like this. So I'm just gonna use a scoop. I need about 3 teaspoons, which is the same as a tablespoon. So I'll mix this in. There we go. And I'm just kind of stirring around, making sure none of the rice sticks to the pan until we're ready. Okay, it looks like we've got a pretty good boil forming right here on it. So I'm gonna turn this down nice and low. We're gonna put our lid on, and we'll let it do its magic. Okay. Now, because not everybody in my family loves beans, I'm keeping beans separate from this, but you could easily throw these beans into the rice dish and have it as one big thing. But I'm just gonna cook up a can of beans on the side to have for my oldest daughter. She loves beans, and my parents love beans, so we've got some beans for them. I'm gonna saute up some little bit of onions to go in there. So we're just gonna jazz up a can of dark red kidney beans. With some Cajun flavors, and just make it a little bit nicer on there so that they can throw in some beans on the side for them. So I'm gonna use a little bit of butter with it because I actually find butter and beans taste a little bit better than oil and beans. It's kind of like when you go back to those refried beans, they're so delicious. You don't need much because it's just a can, so I'm just gonna use about a teaspoon of butter or so. We'll put that in there and we'll do a little bit more. If it wants to fall, there we go. We're gonna be using some of that butter for our honey cornbread glaze, the honey glaze that we're gonna put over it. So once it melts up, I'm gonna add in my my beans or my onions, and then we're gonna put in about 2 cloves of garlic, and I'll do a couple of sweet peppers, so you have just a little bit of some nice little veggies to kind of flavor it up as well. And then we'll just let it kind of simmer. So we've got our garlic here minced up to go in there. Butter, we'll add this little bit. We're gonna do our onions first, let them get a few minutes to kind of sear off in that butter before we add our garlic in. And then we'll add a couple peppers, sweet peppers in there. I've got some more that we're going to kind of slice up because we'll saute up our chicken, and then I'm going to saute up a couple vegetables to throw on top. So almost kind of like a fajita vegetable on top. There we go. So we have that. And then I'll move that to the side, and then we can kind of prep up our last little vegetables that we'll use for it, and then we'll get our chicken going. But since we're on here working, we're just gonna do kind of skinny slices on our onion. I'm down to like my last few onions, so I'm gonna use out there. I'm gonna cook up everything I have in the house before I go to the store. We're gonna make it through. I still have like 2 gallons of milk, so we're good. As long as we don't run out of milk and eggs and butter, we're good. We can make lots of different things for that. Might be a lot of baked goods, but we'll survive. Although originally I heard that there might be more snow coming, but it looks like it's just gonna be like little snow flurries. I was like, oh, wouldn't the kids be lovely if we got another little snowstorm and more school off? They would be so happy. Okay, so we've got our little veggies so far. Let's get our onions over here. We'll give this a little stir. Kind of caramelize up just a smidge. I'm going to start rinsing my beans again. We're just going to use some dark red kidney beans, but you could use red beans, black beans, really any beans that you have lying around. This is just the one I have the most kidney beans in my pantry. So I was like, we're going to use those up because I rarely use kidney beans unless I'm making like a minestrone. And most of the time I'll sub them out for like a white kidney bean because I prefer those. Or I'm making chili. So we'll give them a quick rinse because we don't want that beany water paste on them. Good rinse. I'm gonna let them kind of drain right there on top of that. Let's get our garlic and our peppers in here so they can saute up for just a second. Add a little bit of flavor in there. And again, this is just a small batch of beans. My oldest daughter always complains that I don't make enough beans for her, so here are her beans. And we're gonna add in a little bit of tomato paste as well for this. This is gonna add just a little bit of richness and acidity to the beans that will pair well with some of the spices that we're gonna use. We bring these all over here. We're gonna use them in that. And I just want these spices to kind of heat up a little bit. That just allows their flavors to come out a little bit more. So just a light sprinkle of thyme. I'm going to turn this down a little bit to a medium. We're just doing a small amount of each one, less than a teaspoon, like a fourth to a teaspoon to a half of a teaspoon, because it is a small amount. Oregano I'll probably do closer to a half a teaspoon, so thyme was like a fourth of a teaspoon, because oregano is more mild. Red pepper, like the lightest of dusting. It's in there because, you know, it needs to be in there. We'll do paprika. I'm going to do about a half a teaspoon because, again, it's a very mild spice.
Did you get any more garlic salt?
I did get more garlic salt. We will actually throw a little bit of garlic salt in here. Some onion powder. We're going to do like a half a teaspoon. A little black pepper. We'll do like a fourth of a teaspoon. And then let me grab my garlic salt. We're going to use up this little guy first. He's not little, but he's got a little bit left in him. I'm going to do about a teaspoon of garlic salt because he's going to be seasoning up this guy. We're going to give this a nice little toast up with that tomato paste in here. There we go. This is going to make a really good kind of nice flavor base. And now we can add our beans in, and then we'll add a little bit of liquid and some bouillon to it so that they can kind of stew. So we'll kind of coat the beans up here with those flavors. And then I'm going to grab just about half a cup or so of liquid. I'm going to do a little bit at a time. Kind of coat them up. And that tomato paste will really absorb this liquid and make a nice kind of base for it. Do a little bit more. Perfect. So just enough liquid to cover the beans, but you don't want them to be super soupy. I'm going to turn this down, and then I'm going to put in just a smidge of our chicken bouillon in there. Flavor it up. And I have just a teeniest amount left in this little container, so it'll be perfect. You could also use a vegetable bouillon if you have it. That was like half a teaspoon, so we have the garlic salt, and a little bit of that adds a little bit of a richer flavor to it, but it will be delicious. Okay. We're gonna let that just simmer on a low heat, kind of bring those flavors together. Let's get our chicken prepped up, and then we can finish up our veggies at the end. But we'll sear this off. I'm gonna fillet. I've got some thinner pieces, like this one doesn't need to be filleted, but my thicker ones will fillet in half. And then we're gonna season them with our Cajun spices, kind of bring everything together. And then we'll just kind of sear the fillets off that we can then serve over our rice dish. You could always slice them up into smaller pieces as well and just have like, almost like, you know, fajita chicken that you put over the top, but we're gonna keep them in the fillets. They just stay a little bit more moist and tender that way. This guy, he's fat but small, so we'll just fillet him as well. It's not so much about the, like, how long they are, but it's the thickness of them. You want them all to kind of cook up fairly evenly. Okay. We're gonna cut that piece of fat off. Give our hand a quick rinse. And let's get these guys seasoned up. So we're gonna use a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, which is gonna break through the acidity of the chicken. Let me grab some tongs out here real quick. That way I can spread all of this chicken out, and then we can season up both sides. So we're going to do a little bit of Worcestershire. Kind of coat it all the way around. And then I'm only going to do liquid smoke on one side, and I'm going to do just this smallest amount of liquid smoke But this will give it a nice smoky flavor, but it is a pretty strong flavor to it. So just a little drop here and there.
If you could only have one kitchen gadget, what would it be?
Well, I would say if it's gonna go to like a utensil part thing, I really love my tongs. I use my tongs in everything. But if it's like specialty bougie gadgets, would probably be, I don't know, it's so tricky because there's so many different things that I love, like
Pasta thing.
my pasta thing, because you want me to make my own pasta, that's what it is. But I do love my pasta roller out, but I can always roll that out by hand. I don't know, that's a tricky one. It is tricky because I do love my blender because I have a Vitamix blender and I love that for soups and everything like that.
The lemon tart pan.
Lemon tart pan, of course you would say the lemon tart pan. That would be the one thing I would get rid of. You know, I don't know. I feel like it just really depends on what you do a lot of cooking and making of.
I'd say for you, the Vitamix.
Yeah, I do love my Vitamix because it really, I mean, you can make smoothies and it, but I really do it for making my nice, like, thick bisque-like soups. And you can also process, like, you can use that in place of a, you know, a food processor as well. It kind of works similar. So I put onion powder on, and then I'm doing some paprika. We're gonna do some Mrs. Dash's table blend. Coat this all over. We're giving a good amount of flavor to these guys. A little bit of black pepper. A little bit of thyme. And then a little bit of oregano, and then we'll finish it off with some garlic salt and the smallest dusting of red pepper imaginable. Give you a little bit of that heat, but not so much that it burns.
You have a question. Is the table blend the original Mrs. Dash's?
I believe it's the originals that have been ground finer, so it's a very fine blend. So the original one is the bigger chunks of the herbs, and then the table blend is where it's been ground up to be a fine blend, so you could like shake it out on your thing. So I love it because it's more fine, and so you don't get the big chunks of spices at times, which is nice on certain like cooking things. You don't want like lots of herbs, like chunky herbs. But it is essentially the same thing. And then, where's my red pepper? Right here. Little itty bitty. Nice little dusting. And we're gonna flip this over and do the same thing on the other side. Make sure you season up both sides of your chicken. You want it to have nice, lovely flavor all the way through. Especially because this is kind of like a quick marinade in the sense that it's not going to have time to really seep in. We will do the Worcestershire on both sides, but we are not going to do the liquid smoke because the liquid smoke has a very strong flavor. It just needs to be on one side. Onion powder, and all of these herbs will make a really great kind of herby crust on your chicken, so a nice kind of flavorful coating. A little bit of black pepper. Oregano. And I always say you can go a little bit heavier on the oregano because it's more mild. The thyme, don't go too heavy on. It has a strong flavor and it can overpower the rest of the herbs. So just a really light dusting. And this is not ground thyme. This is the leaf thyme, ground thyme. Go a little bit lighter on it too because that has more flavor in it. Some Mrs. Dash's table blend. Some paprika. Now paprika is one of those things when you toast it up, it's going to give your chicken more of a blackened color. It's what you used for the like blackened fish, blackened chicken for it. But it's not burnt. It just goes from being red to brown when it cooks up. A little bit of garlic salt. And then of course we'll finish with the lightest, smallest, teeniest amount of red pepper or cayenne pepper imaginable. Now we've got it nice and seasoned up. We'll get our oil in here to sear off our chicken here. Probably just about 2 tablespoons or so. You don't need a whole lot because again, we're using a non-stick pan. Just a nice little coating. There we go. Give this a nice little stir around for our beans on there. That's, again, we have our seasonings in there, some tomato paste, some great flavors in it. Here, let's check. We're going to start making our honey butter for this to brush over our cornbread when it comes out here in a second. So for our cornbread, we need about 1/4 cup of butter, and we're going to let this melt on here. And then once it's melted, we'll remove it from heat, and then we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of honey. You don't want to melt it, add the honey and the butter together, because honey, when you cook it, it's like sugar. It will turn to like a candy and it will get crunchy. So we're just going to melt the butter, remove it, and then we'll add the honey in right away while it's still warm but not on direct heat. So 1/4 cup is 4 tablespoons of butter. And this is because we're going to brush each one of those loaves over twice with our honey butter. Let's get this for it. And kind of keep that up there. We'll get that going. And then I'm going to just slide this up and we can start prepping some of our zucchini up and our vegetables after we saute our chicken up to half. So we'll just slide this up here. And on here. And then we're going to have some zucchini to go with this as well. I was very thankful that it did not freeze out there because I have a lot of my produce. I have, lots of refrigerators outside, and a lot of my onions froze and everything, but the zucchini did not freeze. So we're going to do half slices just because I like to leave a little bit of skin on each piece, and you could do it like, where you do like a mandolin or like a julienne style on it, but I find that when you get this center cut of the zucchini, it's very, very flimsy. So we'll just do cut in half, that way there's a little bit of skin that holds it together that will crisp up nicely. Okay. It looks like we're just around nice and hot on here. I'm going to give my butter a quick swirl.
Do you ever make zucchini bread?
I do. I'll make zucchini muffins, or sometimes I'll make zucchini bread. My 10-year-old absolutely loves zucchini bread. And it's so funny because it's like, it's one of those things where I feel like like a lot of people have never had it before, but it is so good. And it's not like, it's like when you have carrot cake, you're not eating a carrot, you're eating something sweet and delicious. Okay, we're gonna add in our honey here. Let me go get a little trivet for this. So we're gonna add in our 2 tablespoons of honey while our butter is nice and warm. That way it can dissolve into it, but it's not going to turn into like a hard thing. So that's 1 and 2. And we're gonna dissolve our tablespoons of our butter into this. And this is what's going to give you that sweet honey flavor on top of it. This is where most of the honey flavor comes. You get a little bit baked into it, because again, we had 2 tablespoons replace some of the sugar in our corn muffins, but the honey butter on top of it is really where it comes from. And you gotta do double glaze. So it comes out, you let it sit for just about a minute, you brush it over, and that first layer of honey butter seeps into the cornbread. And then you wait until about 5 minutes later and it cools off, and then you brush it over again. And then that second layer kind of creates a nice sticky topping on top, and it's just so delicious. Okay, there. That is ready. Let's get our chicken searing off here. We'll turn our pan down to about a 7. And we should have a nice sear on it.
Is there any such thing as a sourdough cornbread?
I have a sourdough cornbread muffin. My kids prefer my honey cornbread muffin better because it's just a slightly different flavor and texture on it. And so I do have one, and like both my husband and I and the little ones really like it, but my older kids love this one. This is their favorite cornbread recipe, so they always are like, make this, make this. I do have one that I think is really good. It's just not their favorite. Okay, let's go grab our cornbread out of the oven. And I'll slide this over here. I can actually put this right over. Let's cool down enough. But it is because you can really taste more of the sourdough through the cornbread muffin in it than you can with these. Okay, look at this. Make sure they have a nice, firm top. Again, because they have the honey in the batter, you have more of a golden brown color versus a yellow. But that honey flavor baked in is what you want. It is the best part about it. It makes it so delicious. If you were to completely omit the honey and just use sugar, then you would have a yellow cornbread. But we love that honey baked into it and then the honey brushed over the top of it.
How's the cookbook coming along?
It's in the process. We're getting there. We've got several recipes. I'm starting to get this formatting set down for it. So I'm hoping sooner rather than later. It's a work in progress. It's more about finding like free time to kind of go there because, it's kids and sports and sports and sports and more sports, and 5 kids. Not enough hours in a day. And, but it's going there. That's my goal, is to get a good move on it. So here we're gonna flip it over. We have this nice kind of rich dark color from this. Again, that is the paprika. The paprika gives you more of a blackened chicken look on your chicken because it is a dark red spice to begin with. And when you cook it, it goes from kind of a red to a dark brown for it. We'll get a plate out to remove these off. This chicken will cook up fast because, again, we filleted it nice and thin, and that allows us to sear it through really quickly, which, again, of course, is what we want for it. Let's do our first coating of honey butter on our cornbread now that they've had a minute to kind of cool off. I always let them come out for just a second before I brush them over. And we're going to go in here. And we're just going to brush over the top of each one. And as you see, it's going to soak right into the cornbread. And this is going to give you that nice, really sweet flavor to it. And we're going to brush over the top of each one, let it sit, and then in a few minutes, when we're done with everything else, we'll brush our second layer, which gives you just that nice kind of honey glaze on top of it. But this one permeates into the cornbread and really gives you that. Think about like a poke cake. And it traps this moisture in and just gives you the best. Okay, so we've got half of our honey butter glaze on there. Get our beans are just about. We'll add in some green onions here in just a second. Let's check on our chicken. It's looking good. I think these are just about finished. Beautiful. Lovely. We'll add in our last round of chicken. And then we can saute off our vegetables, which will do a quick, almost like a fajita sear on our vegetables. Again, we're cooking these off. I have it on a 6, so it's a high, but not an exceptionally high one, but our pan is nice and hot. We've got our rice and everything peeking through here. We can take a quick little peek on it. Let me grab a little pot holder because that's nice and hot. This is kind of our little rice there. You can see all of our vegetables are up. We're going to give it a nice little stir here. Kind of mix it around with it, but you see that wonderful rice in there. Beautiful. So we're just going to give this a nice mix, and then we'll let it continue to steam cooking. Although it's just about done, I can kind of tell that we're pretty much there. Do a little taste. Delicious. Got our beans. We're going to throw in some green onions in that and here. That way we'll give it a nice little bit of flavor. Beautiful. So the paprika really gives this chicken a really wonderful coloring to it. And then all of those spices. But you know, when you see Cajun, like the spice blend, it always has that nice kind of reddish color to it. That is that paprika really giving the coloring to it. It's a very mild and savory spice to it, but it's wonderful. Okay. Let's get this for our beans. Add in some green onion. At the very end, gives a little bit of a pop of fresh onion flavor.
Can you use regular paprika?
Yes, you can use regular or smoked paprika. Smoked paprika gives you, again, a little bit more smoky flavor to it. I used regular because I didn't have smoked, but I added in liquid smoke to give that smoky flavor. So you can definitely use either one. It will just cut down on the smokiness factor of yours. Got our green onions in our beans here.
Do you have a potato soup recipe that you posted?
I do. I actually have a couple of different potato soup recipes depending on what you're looking for. I've got, you know, a leek-in potato soup, which is like a vichyssoise, which you can serve hot or cold. I've got a loaded baked potato soup recipe. I've got a beef and potato soup recipe. So I have several different ones, a cheesy potato soup on there. So you'll have to go through and look at them, but I have several ones because I do love a really good potato soup. So good. Okay, our chicken here is just about done. You can kind of tell by the feeling of it when you touch it. Again, these are nice and thin fillets, which means they're going to cook up really, really fast, which is what you want. That way it traps in that moisture and allows it to keep it really tender and delicious. Here. Get this last one. And then we're just gonna pop in here just a little bit of, on our drippings here, our meat drippings, I'm gonna add in a little bit of extra oil. And we're gonna throw in our veggies here, give them a really quick saute on a high heat like a fajita vegetable with those little flavors in there. And that way we can throw these on our dish at the very end. So we're gonna get our onions and our peppers in here. And we'll give this a nice little toss. And you can see as we cook, it picks up those little meat drippings, and these are gonna give really great flavor. We'll let these heat for about, 30 seconds to a minute before we add in our zucchini. But just think of your nice hot skillet veggies that you get with a fajita. These are gonna go wonderfully. So I have it cooking over about a 7 right now, so a pretty, medium high, pretty good temperature, so we get this good sear on it. Now we're gonna add in our zucchini. We'll coat them up. I'll add a little bit of garlic salt, and we'll have our vegetables. The zucchini will crisp up fairly quickly on here, and then we'll be ready to serve. We'll do one more coating of our honey butter on our cornbread because that's very, very important. So make sure you coat your zucchini up so they get all of those nice seasonings in it, because zucchini is like little sponges and they just soak up all of that delicious flavor. But you don't want to overcook them because they'll get mushy if you overcook. So fast, high, quick cooking on them is the best to have a nice form with them, with the flavor and a good sear, but before they get mushy.
Could you throw in mushrooms?
You could definitely throw in mushrooms in this dish. Honestly, with it, these flavors work well with a lot of different vegetables on here. And do a little bit of garlic salt. Season it up. Coat it. And they are just about, you can just see how they're just picking up those flavors and are just about ready. Okay, let's brush our cornbread one last time with our remaining honey butter. And you can see that honey and that butter together has formed kind of like a thick, glaze. And then we're just gonna brush this over the top of it. And what gives this cornbread this lovely golden brown color is the honey that we put in during our baking process. So we subbed out essentially a 1/3 cup of sugar for 2 tablespoons of honey, and that gives a golden brown bake. So when you break into the cornbread, it's going to be golden and yellow, but when it bakes up on top, that honey color really gives it that nice lovely brown coloring to it. It's the same thing if when I do my bagels and we do a honey bath, that's what gives the bagels their nice golden amber brown color to it. So right through here, and voila, so delicious. There's our beans. You see how much all that liquid has reduced down? I'm gonna turn those off. They are ready. I'm gonna turn this guy off. The ears are ready. I'm going to turn our zucchini off because they are ready as well. Look at that, beautiful. And we are ready to serve up here. You get a cutting board out. We're going to serve up our lunch. And just slide this over here so I have a little bit of space to put. Makes serving a little bit easier. Quite. These guys are so delicious. And I get one of them up free because sometimes they don't like to pop out so easily for you. Okay. Oh, I need a spoon for this, and then we can add it right here. For lunch today, we have our Cajun rice that we made by first sauteing off bacon. Then we added in onions, peppers, tomatoes, a bunch of Cajun spices. We're gonna put a nice little base down here of that. We're gonna add in our Cajun spiced beans. These are red kidney beans, dark red kidney beans that we seasoned up with our Cajun spices, added garlic, onions, and peppers. We have our sauteed zucchini, peppers, and onions on top as well. A nice little seasoned vegetable that we cooked in the meat drippings from our chicken. And then of course we will add a nice fillet of our chicken on top for a really delicious kind of chicken and rice bowl. And of course, let's not forget the star of our show, our honey cornbread. Look, we're gonna break inside. Look how delicious that is inside. So good, so delicious on there. Well guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made, our Cajun chicken and rice bowl with our honey cornbread, and you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my all-clad pans, my hex-clad pans, my bakeware, my knives, cutting boards, all the different things that I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us